being 9:30, we'll call the meeting to order. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the agenda, I think
I have
a couple
sorry.
changes here.
Two small changes. I would like to cross out 4A3, our 67-day employee hire. And then I would also like to postpone A2, the search for the appraiser position. We'd like to bring that to the Personnel Committee and talk at our Personnel Committee meeting after this.
Yeah.
We'll discuss that position and the overall program for the
I wondered about
assessor's
the
office.
order of those two
Yep.
meetings. I thought, well,
We
it's
just
a
weren't
little
able to, we
strange.
weren't able to get that meeting in before this, so we'll
Okay.
postpone that one.
Wonderful.
And that should be the only two changes I have.
Looking for a motion to approve it with those two changes.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval of the minutes from the August 27th board meeting and the workshop September 3rd.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstained because I wasn't at the September 3rd
Okay.
Workshop.
at the workshop.
Jack probably too. Okay. Public comment period. Anybody wish to address the board before we start our appointments? Okay. And our 9:30 appointment is Eric Leitzen, Historic Bluff Country.
All right.
If you'd like to come
Yeah, if you would
forward
please, up into the
by the
microphone.
microphone so we can hear you.
And these have kind of a short range, so if you would pull it up close, please.
All right.
Thanks, Eric.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning.
My name is Eric Leitzen. I am the president of Southeast Minnesota Historic Bluff Country. It's a 501c3 regional tourism promotion organization and an advocacy organization stretching for 88 miles along Minnesota Highway 16 from La Crescent to Dexter and extending miles north and south of the byway, which includes communities like Caledonia, Mabel, Canton, most of Highway 44 as well. As I said, we're a regional advocacy group, so what we do is we fill a very important spot for promoting the area. The difference between local chambers and the next step up, which is the Southern Minnesota Tourism Association, is pretty big. Southern Minnesota's a big area. Minnesota's kind of a big area. So there's a necessary niche in there for a place like Historic Bluff Country to promote the region as a whole. This is a very unique region. This is a region a lot of people come to from all over the world. We have some things here that some people have never seen before. We have some things here that are unique in the world. There are a couple of films, actually, people who have come from around the world to film movies in this area. So we want to be an organization, we have been an organization, to promote the entire area as a destination. And that means coming in, maybe staying at the new hotel in La Crescent, coming over and visiting Caledonia, visiting Houston, maybe going down the ridge on 44, maybe going down the byway on 16, and spending your money and your time here in Bluff Country. The idea that HBC likes to work around is it's better to have someone come and spend $20 3 times a year rather than come once and spend $50. The idea is to try to see if they will spend money in a couple different places and want to come back and explore more places than just come one place and then not come back and say they've seen it all. So the idea is to pool the resources because the communities are stronger together. I've worked in tourism for Lanesboro, I've worked in HOCA, now I'm the president of HBC, and I know that trying to promote the area is expensive and it's time consuming, and so we want to serve as a resource for the communities in the area to work together and find out a way to promote the area as a whole while also making sure to promote their individual areas as well. So we understand the ads are expensive. We're hoping to pool resources. We're hoping to pool money and maybe try to promote everybody, trying to get everything going at once rather than each town trying to do it themselves. As such, we ask every year for donations and contributions. Every township, business is considered a member of Historic Bluff Country just by the nature of the organization. So we ask that there are paid members, and we ask that you give. The cities are usually asked to pay on a per capita basis, $1 per capita, at a cap of $1,500. So the bigger cities, La Crescent, Caledonia, pay the $1,500 cap. The smaller cities pay essentially their population as of the last census. The reason I'm speaking here today is because the townships and other areas around there obviously can't pay on individual per capitas, and what's happened is in the past we've gone to the counties, Fillmore and Houston County. The byway does extend into Mower County for a small amount, into Dexter, but not too much that we feel like we could go to the county asking for a significant donation. But in the past, we have asked Fillmore and we've asked Houston for money regarding the townships. Taking that as a simple dollar per capita for Houston County, that winds up being something like $7,000. And I'm seeing some eyebrows, I understand. So obviously we're just getting started with this. This is the first time I've come here speaking to you, so we would not be asking for something quite that significant. Anything you can contribute would help along the way and help us to promote the entire area, all the little, all the townships, all the smaller areas going, and all the events that go on and happen out there. We have so many fantastic events going on here, and as I have dug in, as president, our director resigned earlier in the year, and as president I've kind of taken over the promotional duties. And just seeing how many events happen, just in the average month, just everything going on. I'm sharing so many different events on our social media. I'm getting in contact with so many people. There is so much to do here that I love telling people about it, and I want to continue telling people about it, and I want to expand that. I want to expand to Minnesota. I want to expand out to the, other states in the region, Dakotas. I want to hit the Chicago market, definitely Wisconsin as well. And down into Iowa, I've got a brother in Cedar Rapids. I can tell you that Cedar Rapids, while a beautiful city, does not look like what we've got around here. And a lot of people like to come up from Cedar Rapids for a day trip. They like to see the bluffs. They like to go for a ride. They like to see what's going on. So the idea would be with the funding to move forward, promote the area as a tourism destination, and also this would allow HBC to serve as an advocate up in the capital for the region as well. I've already spoken with both senators and Representative Hagedorn. Representative Hagedorn has voted to revive the National Scenic Byways Program. That bill has cleared the House. It's in the Senate. And the Senate does take a while. That's by design. But I've talked to both Senators Klobuchar and Smith in the hopes of moving forward with that as well. So here to introduce myself and everything we do. You can check us out on Facebook and go to the website bluffcountry.com, see what we're up to. Just came here to introduce the organization, say hello, let you know what we're about and what we're hoping to do for the area. I know that budgeting will start up and you'll talk about what to donate, what not to donate. So we hope that you will take some time and donate on behalf of the townships as the county for HBC going forward. So thank you very much for your time.
Are there any grants so that you can get it from the state grants?
Yes, we will be applying for the Explore Minnesota Tourism Grant. That's a one-to-one match, so if we spend $1,000, they spend $1,000. That all needs to be spent outside of Minnesota by design. But we are looking to, I mean, Wisconsin's right over there. We're looking into getting a billboard, looking into increasing our Facebook boosted posts as well. In the past, we've looked into radio and television advertisements, hoping to get some video production going as well, even if they're just short little videos where we put them up on YouTube and explain what all the little towns are about and all the fun you can have there, things like that. So we are looking to pursue that grant specifically. We've looked at the Southern Minnesota Initiative Fund. Most of those seem specifically tailored to municipalities, and but we are keeping an eye out for Smith and other organizations to see if we can get more grant money as well to fund our mission. Yeah.
How do you differentiate from the Southeast Minnesota tourism groups?
Oh, the Southern Minnesota, the other groups. We represent the area as a whole. We have trail towns, which specifically is to the towns along the trail, obviously. So Caledonia isn't tied in with that. A lot of the other different towns, Lanesboro and Wayland, I believe, are combined. Rushmont and Peterson are combined with their chambers, and that's part of the new direction we're looking at going with HBC. In the past, HBC essentially served as a chamber for some of the smaller towns. But now, you know, Harmony has its own chamber, Caledonia has its own chamber, La Crescent has a chamber, all of them have their own chambers, and that's fantastic, because who can promote the cities better than the cities themselves? It's our job to try to aggregate that and present a united front, and then try to take that not only up to St. Paul, but to all greater Minnesota, Wisconsin, and so on and so on. My wife usually rolls her eyes and gives me a look, but I like to say that Bluff Country is the United Nations of southeastern Minnesota. The idea is that each of the towns and each of the businesses can come there on an equal footing, address the issues needed. We can discuss what we need to do going forward. So,
Little eye roll there.
yeah, every time.
So it's bluffcountry.com.
Yep,
Okay,
and facebook.com/Historic Bluff Country.
all right.
Are all the cities in Houston County members?
Yes,
And as far as your promotions, besides the online, do you do brochures, or is it,
we're currently partnering with Jason Sathria of the Fillmore County Journal. He puts out a Bluff Country paper brochure. We also do online. We're looking into putting together sort of itineraries and different things like that. Obviously, with more funding, we would look into paper brochures. We've printed a few in the past, some rack cards, things like that. Around about 10, 15 years ago, we had a paper brochure and a special byways guide, which I know comes up. The back roads was usually very popular, if any of you remember that. And we're looking to get back into things like that.
All right.
Thank you very much.
And we
Thank
will
you.
Thank you.
consider.
thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda.
Just real quick through that, Resolution 1930 formalizes and closes up the land purchase deal for the land we purchased and swapped on the highway. Yeah.
The one that was in the packet is not the one that it says 25 stalls, the city said 27. I'm just making sure.
Yeah.
No, I'm just making sure.
Yeah, I'll check that. I thought I had. Okay, I'll check that.
Okay, thank you.
And the resolution 1931 is to execute the Towards Zero Deaths grant. Department of it's Transportation that covers that one.
Office of Transportation Safety.
Yeah, Transportation Safety. They require a resolution to apply for the grant and then a resolution to accept the grant. It's the exact same verbiage on their template, so.
Is this a matching grant at all, or any?
No.
No,
No.
just the grant.
Yeah. So this just formalizes accepting the money there. And then we
Question.
Mhm.
We get the grant. We get the grant, then, is that,
Yes.
and we do what with it?
We would work with the engineering, law enforcement, our part in education, and EMS to address traffic safety deaths. So we work with the state and look at crash trends, crash data, seatbelt use, speed, that sort of thing. So what this office does is require us to inform our board with a resolution that we intend to apply for the grant. So we have that conversation, and once we receive it, that is basically saying, yep, we accept the funds and what we set forth in our work plan to do with that, with our health educator that we have.
You have to document what the grant is used for.
Right, similar to any other grant that we would receive. Yep, there's stipulations in that with Office of Traffic Safety and with NHTSA to carry out those grant duties.
So
And
you-
this is just in Houston County?
This particular grant, yes, is just Houston County. Fillmore County does have a TZD grant, but those are individual applications. What this funding agency does is it kind of caps what a grantee can apply for, so it's more advantageous to apply independently versus a CHB. And there are a number of other grantee counties in southeast Minnesota.
Since Brian's here, I asked Brian, have you done anything through the county? I mean,
Yes,
talked about the joint effort. The grant is for each county, but the coalition, a requirement of the grant is to have what's called a TZD, or Towards Zero Death Coalition. And so we do partner with Fillmore on that because it is advantageous. You know, our engineers work together, our enforcement, and so it's just having those collaborative conversations. So we do pull those staff together and those partners together, as Brian referred to. So that's the joint part of it.
So when you write the grant, you tell them what we're gonna use the money for?
Yeah, and they
Upfront,
kind of,
it's not
yes,
after the
yes, they
fact.
kind of give us a menu of options, so a lot of those potential grant duties or activities come from a menu of things that are driven by data, whether it's seatbelt, alcohol, impaired driving, speed. So we look at statewide data to look at what is impacting Houston County the most, and then we take that data and decide what we need to do with that, or where we can address some of the education.
And it's your office that writes the grant?
Yes.
In conjunction, I assume you talk to county engineer and the sheriff and whatnot to come up
Yes,
with
we
what's
have,
best suited.
they would have, Brian, on behalf of the highway department, he submitted a letter of support along with the other partnering enforcement and EMS to our grant. So we illustrated to the state that we have those partners and have communication with those partners.
This is just a one-year deal?
This is a
One time.
one-year grant cycle. Yep, October through December, and then it's typically, it's not a guaranteed renewal, it's a competitive
Yep.
process.
We've had the grant in the past and then didn't have it and now have received it again. I think as far as this year, one of the things we'll be focusing on is distracted driving with the new cell phone law that came into effect in August. That was one of the things that was highlighted in the proposal.
Gonna put an advertising sign when they come in out of Iowa and Wisconsin, put your phone away. Did you see Wisconsin and Iowa people talking on the phone? Okay.
Well,
Yep.
again, I like the goal. It's just I've mentioned numerous times, my personal experience with it is on Highway 52 from Rochester to the city. It's a big sign, zero death corridor. And I have to be careful that I don't get run over if I slow down to read it. I mean, I just think enforcement has to be a critical portion of this. And I see absolutely none on 52, but hopefully we'll
think the
make
intent-
good use of it.
I think the intent of this is a collaborative effort between education, roadway design, after incident review, so what contributed to a fatal crash. Maybe it's a design element that working with the county engineer.
I can see where roadway design to be a big thing.
Yeah.
Or also enforcement. So
Enforcement
with
is
a
a big
new
thing.
cell phone law, enforcement's gonna be a big deal.
Right.
And speed and impaired driving, all of those things.
Well, that 52 stretch, the design, I think that they've made some overpass changes, but, you know, that's still a rural area where they're pulling farm machinery across 4 lanes of traffic and people, so
Yeah,
it's a
across the-
challenge.
Across the 4 lane, it's not an overpass.
Yeah, so, okay, thank you.
So yeah, the board approved applying for the grant in June. This is just to formalize accepting it, so. All right. And then personal actions as listed, so.
Any other questions? We were just part of your consent, so we'll disappear.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Moving on to action items. Number 1, consider approving the conditional use permit request from Claire and Jared Olson, Yucatan Township. Was Aaron gonna address this in, we actually got it.
You've got all the paperwork. I
We
can
got all the
pull it up here and
paperwork
give a summary. Let me find it.
Amelia was,
I thought Amelia was going to talk on it, but maybe not.
1 second, here, let me refresh.
But we did get all the paperwork as
I was at the meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
I didn't sit in for Bob, although I am, you weren't there, but I could have filled in for you
Mhm.
I'm a alternate, but So I'm kind of familiar with it.
Okay,
Okay. It's a conditional use permit to expand a feedlot over 300 animal units and build a manure storage structure with a capacity of over 20,000 gallons in Olson Farm in Yucatan. And if you want to add anything else
Yeah,
to it,
they're-
I can find the board findings and such, but.
They had an old earthen manure lagoon, and they're gonna change that to a cement structure. And they have an old freestall barn that was built in the early 70s, and they're gonna replace that because it's getting wore out. And then, as they're doing that, they applied for an expansion. Well, there's Amelia now, so, but Amelia did a good job of working through that and get them to dot all their I's and cross all the T's. I'd just like to add that with Claire and his family, his son is in the operation, that kudos to them for wanting to stick their neck out and keep pursuing in the dairy industry when a lot of them are getting out.
yeah.
And I'd like to see that happen in Houston County. It's a major part of our economy, so. And I think you did a good job in helping them through that.
The recommended conditions from the Planning Commission include the standard comply with all federal, state, and local laws and regulations. The second one is the permittee shall obtain all permits required under Minnesota animal feedlot rules prior to commencing work on the manure pit. And 3, the county may enter the premises at reasonable times and reasonable manner to ensure inspection and compliance. So, the standard conditions to go along with that.
I move for approval.
Second.
You beat me to it.
Further discussion? I think we have to add the words based on the findings
Yeah,
and
with-
the conditions,
Yeah, there was no extra conditions,
just the 3
State.
that.
Standard 3 conditions.
Standard.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Okay, next is Amelia 2. Consider approval to amend the CUP 296 conditions for Todd Soini, Spring Grove Township. That's the one we dealt with last March.
Yep.
If you recall, we had a public hearing in March of 2019. At that time, the board had sufficient, or could have taken action where they could have revoked the CUP, but instead you decided to modify it.
Is your mic on?
Yep.
There,
No.
now it is.
Okay.
That'll help. Thank you.
So I'll start over. I guess in March then, if you recall, we had a public hearing to address some issues we had at Todd Soini's farm out on County 4 in Spring Grove. And as part of that, then the board decided to, instead of taking action and revoking the CUP, they decided to modify it. And so our office has worked with Todd over the summer to figure out where the kind of the issues were, and we looked, or the only condition we ended up coming back with to amend the CUP was that he should, or there should be written landowner agreements for land application of manure anticipated to be generated in the next year must be filed with Houston County by December 31st for the upcoming year. And so that is the only condition we're bringing forth at this time to amend that CUP.
And that's a written documentation he has to do by December
Yep.
31st, okay. Is he okay with that? I mean, he
Yep.
will do it,
Yep, and we already have ones in place for this year.
okay.
And then it'll just be,
Basically renewal thing.
yeah, down the line, so.
Has there been any further problems out there, or?
He removed the cattle from that site this spring as soon as he could get them out on pasture. And then, we haven't heard of anything since. There was still some in there in the basin that had to be moved out. It didn't get put on pre-plant, so, hopefully this fall they'll get it cleaned out then. But as far as I know, he doesn't have, plans to restock the site in the near future. Or I have not heard anything, so.
I make a motion, we approve the amended CUP.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. All right. Moving on, consider approving contract on behalf of EDA for Dripless Grown Initiative website and branding.
Good morning.
Morning.
So as many of you know, Houston County received a SMIF grant for the Driftless Grown initiative. We received $18,000, and then we've also had some generous matching funds given. So we have over $20,000 right now for the Driftless Grown initiative. Driftless Grown is a new initiative to help farmers in Houston County build skills as entrepreneurs and connect with resources to help strengthen their business. The project aims to support existing and budding farmers by connecting them with education, networks, resources, and new markets, as well as attract new entrepreneurs to the region through strategic branding and promotion. The idea behind this website is going to be twofold. So if you are just interested in driftless grown products, you can go to the website and you'll be able to see lots of Houston County businesses featured as a driftless grown producer, whether it's a dairy farm or someone who has flowers on their farm or sells vegetables. This is going to be a big branding thing for a variety of farmers in our region. And then the second part of the website, there will be a login where if you're a Driftless Grown member, you'll create a login with a password and you can log in and see. So as a part of this initiative, we're going to, for example, offer classes that farmers have told us that they're interested in learning more about. So you'll be able to find resources on there for things like that, and you'll also be able to connect with other local farmers. So if you have a tractor and it breaks down and you want to borrow someone's, you can write a message on there, and the other members will be able to see that and respond to it. We've already started something similar to this on Facebook. There's a Driftless Grown Facebook page, which is open to the public, that just features different people in the region who grow things here. And then there's also a Driftless Grown members only page. And actually, when I checked this morning, there are 71 members in that members only group, which is great because when we started and applied for the grant, we had 52. So it's really grown. So we're just asking for your approval. We've found someone that we'd like to contract with for the website, and we want to move forward with it. It will be separate from the Houston County EDA website, but we will link on our agriculture page to this Driftless Grown website. So, does anyone have any questions?
I think it sounds very good.
Good.
Can I,
Yeah.
Yes.
on, in there under objectives, the fifth point of objectives said to hire a coordinator. So does that come out of the $18,000?
It does.
And, I mean,
Will that cover it?
will that, yeah.
Will the 18,000 cover the coordinator? Yes. Yes. I believe we.
It's a part-time.
Yeah, it'll just be a few hours per week. Sarah Mann is who we would like to be the coordinator. We're just in the process of working on her contract right now. She's the one who kind of had the vision behind the whole Driftless Grown initiative
What's
to
the
begin
name
with.
of
Sarah Mann,
Oh,
the owner of Sweet 16 Farms. We would like to pay her $10,000 to be the coordinator, but we don't have that contract officially written yet. So that will be coming at a future meeting.
So you have 3,800 in the web, 10,000 in the coordinator, and what's left can be used for promotion. type thing?
Right. What's left will be used for promotion and also bringing people in to do some of these educational events that people are looking for. We do have some people who have offered their services, but we may hire people to come in for some educational things. One of the things when we surveyed farmers at one of the first groups, a lot of people were saying, for example, that they'd be really interested in a class to learn how to use a chainsaw safely and correctly, because that's something that I guess is needed on some farms. So that's one of the programs that we want to bring in.
It's one of the cutting edge.
And then there, it also talks about July 15th of 2019 with August 1st. Have we already got the grant, or are we applying?
We have gotten the grant. We've been officially awarded, and we've received the funds.
Okay.
And we did already have a Driftless Grown vendor fair, which was in conjunction with Hop Harvest Fest recently, and that went really well.
So,
So
this
we're
is-
just approving a contract then?
You're just approving a contract, yes.
okay.
We're just telling you what we're doing with the grant funds.
The county's the fiscal agent, so the contract itself is with the county on behalf of the EDA, on behalf of the Driftless Grown program.
Understand.
Yes.
But that's the funding stream, is the Driftless Grown grant money.
Well, I'll move approval of the contract.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Allison.
Thank you very much.
She sure does a good job. And last but not least,
Not least, certainly a discussion point here. Was asked to bring together a plan to sell the 22 acres that the county owns. In order to do so, mechanically here, what you would do today is approve a resolution authorizing the sealed bid sale of it. The process would be the standard 3 weeks of advertising it for sealed bids. That's a date set to receive the bids. The board would have the opportunity at that point to accept or reject any and all bids, and then consider what to do from there. If the board didn't accept any of the bids, then we can go down a different path of hiring a realtor, an agent, and then there are different price restrictions that go with it at that point. During the bidding process, the board can accept or reject any bid. What isn't written into it yet, and some things that have been asked to be considered, is we are looking at that corridor along the highway as being a bike path. And so our options are either to not sell the entire 22 acres and keep an acre-ish a stripe along the road, or to write into it an easement before we go forth with the sale. So.
I don't think we should do either one of those two. I feel that'll hinder the value of trying to sell that land. I think it should be sold all 22, and when the time comes for a corridor for a bike trail, and you have all the other land from Beaver to there taken care of, then it can be dealt with the new owner. But I feel we should sell this land. The only thing I would like to see is to push back on the date, and October 8th was the date that I saw.
Yep.
I think that's kind of a busy time for farmers who might be interested in it. I think we should push it back to like late November, and maybe for approval or accepting by this first part of December, you know. That way you give us more time for advertisement and let people know it's out there.
Yeah, I built it based on kind of the fastest
Yeah.
timeline, and
Yeah.
so that's certainly all flexible and.
I think,
Up to the board.
Brian, could you address that bike lane a little bit more detail because of working with the DNR and the MnDOT?
Yes, so right now I'm in the process.
Thanks, Brian.
He addressed this
Thank you.
at our meeting this morning, at our committee meeting, and it explained it a little bit better, why we would possibly keep a 8 to 10 foot.
Yep.
Or-
So right now, I am in the process of working with Beaver Creek Valley State Park to try to get some state park road account money that's dedicated to improve roadways that access state and federal land. My proposal to the park is to see if they would support the option of adding paved shoulders or an on-road bike lane, essentially, or bike path within the existing right-of-way. We currently have 4 to 5 foot shoulders on both sides of County 1 from Trunk Highway 76 all the way down to the hill leading into the park. So we can get a bike, on-road bike lane, essentially probably stripe fog line, maybe rumble strips, and then either a 8-foot path on the one side or 4 foot on both sides of the roadway. We could build that fairly cheap, quickly, easily with a project coming up using the state money, if we can get it. That would get the trail from the intersection of 76 and 1 all the way down to the park. The only thing that would be left would be that little section between the intersection to Caledonia. The large chunk of that land that would be needed would be Trunk Highway, or would be the 22 acres. There's one landowner in the front, right at the intersection, that we might need to get within MnDOT right away for that portion. But overall, I think the path could be done very easily without having to acquire any additional land, assuming that we want to do an on-road. If we did an off-road path, that would require additional land, additional grading, additional work. So
That's what I was assuming.
but to do an on-road widened shoulder, if we get this other funding, it won't cost the county anything to do it. It will get that initial access to the park from town. So it's a start of getting it someplace. There's to get the path fully connected all the way to Houston. That's a different effort, or a greater effort. So at what point do you build what, and do you want to reserve some land, keep some land set aside for that path to be connected? My proposal would be to submit for funding. If we don't get funding, ultimately repave County 1 without doing the widened shoulders or the paved shoulders. It's not a priority where we need to repave County 1 next year. We're submitting for 2021 money, 2022 money. I can delay things a couple more years to get more options on waiting for that funding to become available to us. But the ultimate goal is to get that repaved in the next 5 years, hopefully a little bit quicker with the paved shoulder.
And that goal being to get the money to widen and accommodate the bike path down to the park.
All the way down to the park, yeah.
And once we did that, if we get that, we'd have to acquire a portion of land from the 5-acre owner right at the corner to go across the front of that property where that house sits and whatnot. He's got 5 acres. We'd need
We might need to, or we might be able to be within MnDOT right away for that little section.
Yeah, there's really no right away there anymore than there is any place else.
It's really narrow, so yeah. So we might need to acquire a little bit, but it should be pretty minimal.
But I guess from my perspective, if we anticipate doing that, I think we ought to keep or reserve that 10 foot along the 22 feet as an easement, or as something that we can put into the state right away so that it's there. If we sell it now for $5,000 and then we want to put a bike trail in, they're going to want $15,000, $20,000 for it when we buy it back. From that perspective.
Well, I'm just wondering if this is a good time to sell the 22 acres to begin with. The difference between what we paid for it and what the present assessment is
Well, that's
huge.
That's not what. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just wondering if holding on to it at some point, the value is going to potentially increase.
Right now, land values have kind of flattened off, but it's still a demand for farmland. I think it's a good time to sell it.
Okay.
We're paying taxes on that land because we're getting rental income, so the county is paying taxes on that.
On the income, on the rental income.
Yep. And so, but we have gotten, I think it's like $47,000 some dollars of income since we've owned it, but I feel, given where we're at in the budget and what we want to do with building a new county shop, I think it's something we should strongly consider in selling this. I think we need to sell it.
I think we should go out for bids also, but I think we should put in that 8 to 10 foot easement, if that's the right word, or
I'm just worried
Because
that's
if we
going to
can-
hinder the value and the interest. But I could be wrong.
but it's right along the road itself. It's just,
Well, there isn't a road there now. We're talking, if I'm not mistaken, we're talking this easement or whatever it's gonna be, this 10-foot wide path is gonna go from 76 down toward the high school.
No.
Is that correct?
No.
No.
Parallel to
There's already a
76.
30-foot easement along that fence line.
Okay, there is a 30-foot
That's
easement along
actually
the line.
owned by the school district.
Okay, the school district has that.
They own
Okay, then
one
I'm
side.
mistaken. What's the location of this strip we're talking
On
about?
that side.
So,
Pardon me?
It's not shown.
yeah, so more than likely
Because
you'd
the
want to
people
create
that
a,
rent that land have to pay a half-acre rent to the Caledonia School District. So they own, I don't know, 33 feet of that end of that 22 acres.
Yeah.
yep,
Next
so,
to.
so there is an existing easement that goes from the end of Warrior Way to Trunk Highway 76. That's a total width between the counties and the adjacent landowner, 60 or 66 foot strip that's existing in place already. Over for the connection to get from there over to County 1, MnDOT's right away is essentially from fence line to fence line. There's no room on the backside of the ditch, very minimal ditch along the highway. So what we're talking about is an additional width parallel
with
to
76.
Trunk Highway 76.
Parallel
So
with
essentially,
76
yep. So
from
frontage.
From the east edge of the 22 acres out toward where 76 goes north.
To the park.
Right. Running just parallel.
So what
Yeah,
is the
just running
plan
parallel.
for, to go beyond that with the bike trail?
Current plan would be to get to Beaver.
No, but I'm saying,
What?
after you get through, if you wanted to save 5-10 feet of on the 22 acres, you get to the line there, then where?
North to, or south down to Warrior Way,
To the high school.
to the high school.
And you'd have to work with the school on their little chunk to get that done, is that right? Or are you talking,
I'd like to
you're
know-
talking a chunk from there to there too?
There's a 60-foot easement that runs north and south, either side of the fence.
Right.
I don't know if I agree with you or not as to who owns which 30-foot part. I don't know.
Well,
I thought
I'm
we
pretty sure
owned an
the
easement.
the school owns it because the renters have to pay them.
School owns 30 feet. I don't know which side of the fence the 30 feet is on. I thought we had a 30-foot easement and the school owned a 30-foot easement. I gotta look at it.
I'd have to
No,
look it up.
because their 30-foot easement is on our side.
Yeah, I would have to look it up to know for sure.
The
know
only
that-
reason I know this is because I used to rent that, so I know I had to pay rent to them.
Yeah, but there is that easement is there for a future roadway. So I would envision that in the future, when that street gets developed through, that you would put that path within the, whether it's a path or a sidewalk, within that existing land, so you won't need to acquire any additional outside that 60 foot.
So there is a route to go north and south from the school. If we maintain a right-of-way along Highway 76, be it an easement or dedicated to the state or whatever, for the future bike trail, and potentially a turn lane, because if that 22 acres, 20 acres, whatever the size is, it's developed into a residential property, the bike lane and/or turn lanes would be beneficial as far as that property.
So what you're asking, Bob, is to have a 5 to 10 foot lane along 76, and that's it, right?
Personal opinion, I'd say 10 to 15 to accommodate a turn lane if necessary and still have the bike lane on the outside of the turn lane. I'm looking to the future as far as a turn lane to get into the high school, into developed property there.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, you're gonna probably wanna have it an easement at least 20 feet wide, because if you have a 8-foot path, you need to be able to build it at some point, which
What's
means
that
you need,
compute to, how many acres would that be? Or one?
do you have the
It's like
length?
1,000 and some feet.
It is,
But,
hang on, I've got the legal description here. Let me see
But
if I
when
can
we
find the
sell it,
north
we'd
line.
sell it as whole, but with the stipulation of an easement, correct?
with the potential
Or
development
we'd
on
keep
that
that
easement.
land, is that,
We either keep it or it's an easement. I mean, we can keep it and they can farm it, but then you got that deal like you're talking about, 15 feet of rent or 30 feet of rent or whatever.
typically these things are normally easements, aren't they? I've dealt with this kind of thing before.
Bike trail, a lot of bike trails are
it-
they owned by the property.
Yeah, but it goes both ways. So a lot of what happens is what's it adjacent to. So if it's a brand new trail or a brand new something that you're doing on your own, you're gonna buy, along length, you're gonna probably buy it as fee title land. If it is adjacent to other easements, then you buy it as an easement, or it can be done either way. It really goes back and forth. There is no one set. One way's better than the other.
If we delay going out for bids till November, we have time to research a
that
little
in,
bit.
yep.
Because we won't even be advertising it till October. So this way it would give Brian or whoever is on that.
That's fine.
No, it would give us
research
time.
exactly whether we should do an easement, how big it should be, how many acres it would be.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, my point is it would give us time to get legal advice, which we don't have at this point, on which way would be better to do this, to retain it or to do an easement on it, because I don't know. And none of us are attorneys. We don't know for sure.
And also
Attorneys
gives,
don't even know.
also gives a little bit more time to find out if we can get the funding for that trail aspect of it along County One.
You're working with DNR and MinDOT. with-
Yeah, so what I would need to have at this point is a letter of support from the Beaver Creek Park. If they issue that letter of support to me in the next 3 weeks or so, I will get it submitted to the county engineers screening board, and that board will make a recommendation, yes or no, to recommend approval of funding. I'm very confident that that board will say, yes, we recommend funding. Then it goes to the DNR, and the DNR looks at all the different roadways that had requested funding, look at their other DNR projects, what they would like to see done, and then they select what projects should be funded. So, we could potentially know probably at the earliest in January on state funding. It could take a lot longer than that. So, but
That's all future ifs.
yeah, and then once you get that money, then it's just getting everything designed up and built. Like I said, I think overall, if the park supports this, I think we have a very good likelihood of getting funded, just because this is a county roadway that ends in the state park, right at the state park. I mean, it is the only access in and out of that park other than using the township gravel roadways. So it's a good overall project. I think they would support it.
And when you talk to the park officials, they have campers that come down there with bikes and ask where can they go on their bike, and there isn't any place to go other than up 70 or up County 1 to 76, and there's no width to deal with up there. So this would enhance the use of the park as well, and bring people to Caledonia, my district.
You're doing your job. Huh?
Well, like Fred said, we need to get legal advice, and we need to get a little more definition of what we want, is it easement or keep it,
Yep.
that kind of thing. And we don't want to go out for bids until November, right?
That's what I'm thinking. Late
Recommend.
November for
That helps quite a bit to be able to delay that.
guys are concentrating on harvest on October 8th. They're not worried about buying more land.
No, but take care of what I got
Yeah.
first. Hey.
All right, so if I had to summarize then, no motion for right now, board consensus that we will continue to research the park support for Highway 1 improvements. We'll sort out whether it's an easement or a sliver of land to maintain ownership of, and we'll push the time frame to an October decision to advertise November, bid closing December timeframe.
I think we have a consensus for that.
Is it Brian going to talk to Sam, or are you, or are both of you?
We'll work together on that.
No, okay, just so somebody's responsible for getting that piece in place.
Okay, yeah, then it's a consensus of the board. All right.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
That's the business, so on to discussion.
On to discussion, administrator updates.
Yep. We have just a final reminder on the Township Officer Association dinner tomorrow night. See you all there. We did receive information on Northern Natural Gas, received a tax court assessment adjustment. This, like the other one, is a case of where they challenged their state assessments, and this goes back to 2015, 2016, and they settled in court on the new assessed values between Donna and Carol. They will have to recalculate the new tax payments for those years, and then that will come back out of county funds from those years, and then also go back to down to the townships, et cetera. So some I don't know the total impact yet on the county and all of our other jurisdictions, but just an awareness that has been received. And then the Veterans Treatment Court invitation you all have for the, I don't know, for me, the 20th in Preston or Owatonna as well. So
I think we'd all go to Preston.
yeah.
Yeah, I would think so too. That's at 1 o'clock, I believe.
1:30.
1:30.
At the courthouse.
Yep. So, just an update on that. Judge Strino did mention that this Friday we'll have the first use of the Veterans Court, at least on schedule, with a case. It'll be via VTC out of our courtroom here. So, good to see that coming to fruition and being put to use. So, that's what I have for you.
Township meeting is 6 o'clock?
Yep. Starts at 6. Dinner. Yep.
Yep.
And then there was another meeting we all got emails to, and I noticed Eric and Bob were gonna go with the
CWD
CD, yeah.
in
Rushford.
Rushford.
That's
Yep.
in Rushford.
Yep.
At the school, 7 o'clock, right?
Yep.
Yeah, oh, and one more thing. I did, they opened up the registration yesterday for the AMC conference in December. So I've already got the reservations for everybody for the conference and hotel reservations for everybody.
Oh, thanks.
I'll send that details out to you later, but we're not right next door, but we're not far away. So,
Yeah. I think Fred is the only one that was questioning, won't know for sure. We have time to
Yeah,
cancel.
we've got time, so we've got
So we'll be able to guide each other home then.
yeah.
Anything else, Jeff?
I think that's it.
Jeff, Commissioners, can I address the board again on the Minnesota CP?
Sure. Yeah. Oh, that's your board.
I apologize for it.
So I need to see if
But I want to just make clear in the record that in your packets you were provided some findings of fact. And what I'd ask you to do is, I have them here, I could go through them, or if you've already reviewed them, you could indicate that. But that if we could redo that motion and reference or acknowledge that those findings of fact are underpinning the amended CUP, I think that would be prudent.
I think we did that, didn't we? State that, added the findings back?
We added the conditions, not the findings of fact.
Oh,
Yeah,
No,
the findings of
we
fact.
passed the amended conditions.
So this would be the reason why you're doing that.
So you just want that extra findings in there?
Yeah, I guess I would ask if you could revisit that amending of the CUP motion and specify that the findings provided by staff that you've reviewed are the reasons you're.
We can just add that in there, we wouldn't need to redo it, can't we?
I think,
how about we formalize an amendment to it just to be,
and since Eric made the
Parliamentary
motion
clear.
original, you could amend your motion to,
Amend my motion to include the findings on the amended CUP. Is
That's
that
o-
good?
That's okay with a second.
pardon?
If I remember right, I seconded that.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
thank you, Aaron.
Okay, commissioner reports. Fred?
Okay, I've got just two things. The EDA meeting on last Wednesday morning, there's getting to be a bit more interest on the part of agricultural people. I don't think. There, now I'm closer to it. There's going to be a bit more interest on the part of ag people, farmers, to take a little bit more seriously what they may be able to do to enhance their income. I've been, she's had, Allison has had several conversations with people, and I'm delighted to see this driftless thing come around, because that, I think that's really going to help. The potential there, one of the big problems in for people trying to do extra things on their farm to get more income is marketing. That's the biggie. Well, this driftless business has the potential for really helping in that area. So I'm just absolutely delighted to see that coming. I have one question about the consent agenda. It seems like there's getting to be more and more times when we have automatically there's questions about things on the consent agenda. Well, do we want to just leave it go that way, or do we want to be a little bit tighter on what's on the consent agenda? Just asking the question.
I have found that if I have a question about it, I get hold of Jeff and say, I want this moved to a discussion item or an action item.
But there are some times when you think maybe the public would like to hear a little bit more about this other than just a consent agenda thing. And there's kind of a fine line there. Let's face it, it's really fine line.
Well, I understand what you're getting at, Fred, and that could be brought up as a discussion, like bring it out and say,
Yeah.
What the issues are and what it means and all that stuff. It could be brought up.
Yeah,
I
but do we
think
want
it's-
it, do
Or would
we
you
want,
rather
do we
have
want
it-
to do it as we're doing it? I know sometimes there gets to be a little bit of, well, the board ought, on the part of the administrator, there ought to be, well, that's such a simple item, the board ought to just approve that, we'll put it on consent agenda, and then we question it, and then we move it to the action item, and we fool around with it. Well, yeah, so where do we want to be on that? Do we want to just,
Well, I think if it involves hiring or any substantial spending, I think your suggestion that the public would probably prefer to have it fleshed out a bit is a good one, rather than just routinely approve it.
maybe not quite so much, maybe a little bit more care in what goes on the consent agenda is what you're saying, I think. And that's kind of where I am. No knock on the administrator, he didn't do anything wrong. It's just, on the other hand, then we go back to no consent agenda at all, You don't want to do that either, so whatever. Just bring it up for discussion.
Well, it says
That's what it's for.
You can request moving items on the consent
Yeah,
agenda.
yeah,
so
but,
it's
And that's what we've been doing.
yeah,
that's an option.
yeah.
And on simpler parts of the consent agenda, after the motion and the second is made, you can discuss those specific items if you want to, as far
Yeah.
as question about the
Right.
consent agenda.
Yeah.
I do agree with Jack that hiring probably should be something that's independent of the consent agenda, because it is kind of a major cost aspect to the county.
You're next.
I have nothing to offer.
Well, at this time, why don't we leave it where commissioners may request moving
Yeah.
items from the consent agenda? Because it is I think, in our administrator's job description that he should do the hiring and that kind of thing, but we can request it moved if we have questions.
Yeah, I know.
Sound
I know.
okay?
I know.
It's a good idea though, because we do end up moving something almost every week because we want more information, so. Bob,
Nothing
anything
that-
else, Fred?
No, no, just, I had two
Bob said
things,
he's
those are
fine.
the two.
And Bob said he's fine.
Not pass.
I have nothing either.
Nor do I, other than, I'm unfortunately not going to be able to make the township. I wish I could, but I'll be heading toward Alexandria.
Oh, legislative conference.
Yes.
Boy, I heard a lot about that last week when I went to the state meeting for extension. There were commissioners that just raved about, that's the best conference of all of them.
We'll see.
Because I said, well, we only have one from our county going, but thank you.
It wasn't so far.
So, yeah, right.
I think I indicated last week, I've got 2 rehearsals that night, so I won't be at the township meeting.
I will be there.
Me too.
Good for you. I'm glad.
I'll be,
Okay, well, we got 2, maybe 3, that's great.
Yeah, that will be well represented.
Yeah.
Well, I did go to the state advisory for extension, and we had 2 very good sessions. It's always educational. The one which I'm going to stop and see our EDA person about, it was on a rural stress task force that Extension's put together to help help farmers, help small businesses in the state of Minnesota. And I got names of the 2 of the speakers there that they're just really doing a dynamic job with reaching out to extension educators, telling them, you know, how to deal with it in your county and stuff. So I'll get those names to Allison there. And then this second session, of course, was community-based solutions to the opioid crisis. And that was a kind of 5 different speakers that talked about doing what they're doing around the state as far as extension and helping people deal with, you know, and it covers everything from not just opioids, it covers alcohol abuse, everything. Right now, a lot of their focus is up on the reservations. That's where they've been asked to start with their solutions up there, because there's evidently quite a problem. Most of the deaths in Minnesota were in that northern Minnesota area on the reservations. So, and so then the best part about going to the extension deal is I get to park right next to the main gate of the state fair, and I can walk right over there from my meeting. So it's wonderful.
Rock star.
No.
It is, it really is.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
Allison, does this meeting that she talked about first, does that sound pretty much like what we did in Mabel several months ago?
Similar.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is similar to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So
But
it's
they're
in-
doing it statewide.
Yeah,
So,
okay, they're doing more with it now.
Right.
Yeah, okay,
yes.
good, thank you.
And they have definite speakers that we can get from that group to come talk to us. So, and that was my main meeting I had last week.
Teresa, I do have a question. I received this navigating key land use issues
Yeah, it's got that too.
from MCIT in St. Cloud in October, the 23rd. I'd kind of like to go to that. I don't know if anybody else is looking at it.
Is that the one that the planning commission people go to also, that we went to up in St. Cloud?
Yeah, I think it's,
I would think so.
I think it's the one they run routinely.
Okay.
Jay Squires is one of the speakers.
Yep.
It's kind of like the one we had back in
Yeah.
a while ago here.
Yep.
So it's just another version of that, or a continued part 2,
It's a,
or the same thing?
it might be the same thing.
I think they run that one on a pretty routine
think it's an
basis.
It's
annual
probably the
thing.
same thing then.
Yep.
It has some different things in it from my perspective, so. I'd like to go.
Okay. Do we have to register him for it? I think we should also reach out to planning and zoning. Maybe Aaron would go and some of the people on those boards.
I'll bring it over to him.
You will do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you'd, get with me if you want me to take care of the registration, or you can self-register either way.
Okay. Any other commissioner comments or reports? Closing public comment. Go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. Yvonne Krogstad, Spring Grove, Caledonia Township. I just have a question about an item at the last meeting, which was about the extended warranty on the generator. Commissioner Johnson had asked if there was a deductible in that contract, and the approval of the purchase of the extended warranty was provided that there was no deductible in that contract. Was that correct? What was the answer to that? Is there a deductible?
There is not.
Okay, so it was approved then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to address the board? Okay.
Before we adjourn, Carol's sitting here. Carol, are we getting our budget numbers kind of consolidated a little?
I'm finishing up on those right here.
Okay. Thank you.
We have the human services and with the new home and community-based services, they're moving things around, so a lot of account numbers needed to be added. That's what I'm finishing up.
Make it fit together, okay.
Get it all melded together.
Perfect. Thank you.
So will we do that at our next workshop?
Yes, the next workshop will delve mostly into the public health and human services, and then we'll look at the overall picture as well.
Okay.
Does that include the appropriations? The discussion?
You can? Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Anything else to come before the board?
I'll make a motion to adjourn, see what happens to it.
I already heard Fred has 6 meetings today.
Quicker I can get one done, the better I like it right now.
I only got 3.
Sounds good.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.